everybody, we are going to do some demos for you about how to set up a brand new store from scratch and include a store commerce app for the store and a store commerce for web, which used to be called a CPOS or Cloud POS. So let's get started. All right, you can see my environment here. I'm just using a tier 1 cloud-based environment with the Microsoft demo data installed. So we can see that we are in the company USRT because that is where I have commerce set up and enabled. We can show another video about how to do that later on. So let's deal with our address books. So the store we're going to set up is actually going to be in Denton, Texas. And whenever I'm setting up even test stores and absolutely for real stores, I need to know the actual mailing address, because later on, if you want to test things that are location specific, such as any kind of tax ISVs that you have going on, then you're going to want to have a real address. And so a trick I use is just to open up any kind of browser and look for the city and state you're looking for, and then the word burger, and find the local burger joint or any of them and use the address from that. And so I'm just going to pick one here. I'll try this first one here. And this is what I'm looking for, this is my address right there. So I'll just have that handy, and just remember that my store is going to be in Denton, Texas. And you should also look to see your existing stores you already have. Do you have any kind of naming convention that you're using for your stores? If so, follow that still. All right, so let's check out our address books. So we are going to go to the address book form, which actually lives right up in here in Organization Administration. And I know I need to do a new one. I'll just take a look real quick, make sure there's no Denton ones. There are not. And so I will click New, and I will give it the name I'm looking for. Again, if you already have some kind of naming convention going on, even for address books, continue with that. But I'm just going to call mine Denton, Texas W. Worker address book for Denton, Texas. All right, so I'm going to leave this section blank here, and I am just going to click Save. And then I need to do the same for a customer address book. If what you're using in your retail organization is having separate address books per store or maybe per region or something, then you'd have to set one up for that. If you're going to use a catch-all, very large customer address book so that every store can sell to every customer, then you don't need to make another one, and you can just use that more generic ones. And that's what we're going to do for here. So we're done here for now. All right, so we've created our worker address book. Now I need to make sure that my login that I'm going to use on the POS has the ability to sign in to my new store. And that is controlled through the worker address book. So let's make sure that my worker account has this address book added. So let's go to workers, and definitely go to workers form, not the worker singular form. That's warehouse management stuff. This is for the eventual use of the POS login. So I'll click on that. I will find myself here. Here I am, and I will open myself up. And then on this profile area, I'm going to go into this address book section and click the little pencil so I can see the drop down. And right now what I pretty much have is I've selected every address book that exists in this environment for my login to be able to use. And so probably doesn't have my Denton one because it's new. And there it is. There's Denton, Texas W. That was the one I just created, so I'll select it. Click Select. Click Save. And everything else for my worker is already set up. We can get into the details later if you want to add new workers. And now let's move on to the next step of creating a transit warehouse for our new store. So I'm going to go to the warehouses form, which lives here in inventory management, and I'm going to click New, and I'm going to put in the number for my transit warehouse here. And usually when I'm doing warehouses, I like to put T's in front of the transit warehouses to make sure that they really stand out. So I'm going to do T Denton, just like that, and call it transit for Denton, Texas. In this general section, I'm going to say which site this belongs to. So I'm going to stick to the central here for our demo data site. And this is very important for this next part. We are doing a transit warehouse. And so this is going to be the warehouse that temporarily owns inventory when you're sending goods out via transfer order from one store to another in the time between you send it from one and they haven't quite received it yet in the other. So that's what the transit's going to do for you. So this type right here is what controls all that functionality. So I'm going to call this a transit warehouse. I'm going to go down to the master planning section, and I'm going to make sure it's mentioned that this is manual, because I do not want master planning to look at this warehouse as a possible source of inventory. So now I'll just click save, and now our transit warehouse is done. Now we can make the actual warehouse entry for our new store. And you'll see why I did the transit first. So I'm going to go back up here and click new. And then again, naming convention, if you have one, go for it. I'm just going to call this one straight up Denton, Texas store. And then I will pick my site again. We're in Central. I'm going to leave the type for this one to default. That's what I actually want it to be. If it's a real warehouse holding inventory, default's the way to go. Quarantine and transit are two different types of warehouses. So I'll stick with default for that one. And then here it wants to know what my transit warehouse is. That's why we created that one first. And so I will look in here, T Denton, there's T Denton. And right here in the master planning section, I've left manual no on this one because I do want master planning to see this one. No means master planning will see. Yes for manual means master planning will not see. So let's check out the addresses section here. This is where I'm going to enter the address for my store. So I'm going to click add, and you give it a name or a description. I'll just call this one main for now. We're going to ensure that this purpose is set for delivery. That's going to come into use later on down the line when we're working in the store. And then let's enter the address. But a little pro tip from me to you. Put in the zip code first, 76201. 76201. And then press tab. And see how it pre-filled city, state, and county for me? That's great. But if I had put the address in and then city and state and zip, then it probably would have blanked out my street address anyway. So I always put the zip in first, which is kind of why it's listed first there. There you go. And so now I'll go over here and grab the rest of this address, just right up to there. Plop that there. City, state, county, and then I will set primary to yes. This is our primary address, and click OK. And then I want to go ahead and set my latitude and longitude values. That will be used later on the POS if I ever want to look up store locations, especially when I'm looking for pickup inventory. So I'm just going to set that now by clicking on Advanced. And here in this general section, here's where I put the lat long. So I'm going to take this entire address here and just open up any kind of browser and do lat long for my address here. There's my coordinates. So it's 33 lat -97 long. All right, and I'll just save this, go back, and then let's scroll down and check out the retail section. I'm going to mark that this is a store. There we go. And then in the warehouse section, I'm going to tell it to use financial and physical negative inventory. So that's in this section right up in here. Turn both of those on. Definitely need physical negative inventory when you're dealing with a retail store, because that's the worst thing in the world is when you go and try to sell something to someone who's standing in front of you, cash in hand, and the computer says, no, you can't sell this. You don't have enough inventory. Not good. That is not what we want to happen. So allowing us to go negative will allow us to sell no matter what our count is, and then we can always come back later and correct that count. All right, so now we're done. We're going to click Save. Our warehouse is set up. Now let's check out the default store customer. So let's look at what our other stores are doing. So I'm going to go to All Stores. That's a form in Retail and Commerce. and I'm going to see what other default customer my stores are doing. Looks like for this environment, we've got a pattern of using the same default retail customer for all stores. And that works just fine. But you, in your own environment, might want to have one default store customer for every store, so that when you have your transactional statements being created and posted, anything that's sold at POS without a customer attached is going to be attributed to that default customer. And so if you have one per store, it makes it a little bit easier to narrow down where the transactions occurred at a high level just by looking at the transaction without having to go too far. We're just going to stick with that with the default customer. You can always look at an existing default retail customer and create a new one that's patterned exactly the same, but we'll skip with that one. Now we're going to make a new operating unit for our new store. And so this, what we're about to do, is what creates the entry in this all stores form, right? So let's start from operating units. Operating units, it's in the organization administration area. I'm going to click new and then retail channel. That is what I'm going to create. All right, so we're going to give this a name. Again, go with your naming conventions you're using. Denton, Texas. We're going to leave the channel number as it is. Here's our type. We already chose that. I tabbed and it filled in the search name. This search name only has a set amount of characters. It's going to try and inherit what you used in the name column, but if it's too big, you might have to abbreviate some stuff. But this is going to be the value that's shown for this store inside the organizational hierarchies that we're going to work on next. All right, so for warehouse, we have to select which warehouse we created for the store, which is why we did it before we came in here. So I'll look for Denton, there we go. Our time zone, so we are in the Central US and Canada time zone. And then our store number, this is what we want the store number to be referred to. So you probably have a convention in place for all your stores. So follow that. I'm just going to use just plain old Denton, just like that. For sales tax group, choose the one that applies to your store. I don't have tons of different tax things loaded in this environment, but I'll see if there's one for Texas. That'll work. It's not very specific. In real life, you would have the real tax entries in here to choose from. That would be very specific for where this store is, but I'll just choose this one here for now. And then for default customer, this is the one where we talked about we're going to use the global one. I believe it was 10001, default retail customer. Yep, that's it. And then we're going to add our address again here. We did it for the warehouse. Now we have to do it for the operating unit. So I'll click add. This address is what's going to populate on the POS receipts. If you're wondering where it comes from, it's from right here in operating unit. So again, I'll give it a name like Maine. I'm going to make sure the purpose for this one is business. I'll choose my country region, USA, and then my zip code, 76201, just like we always say, do that one first. And then put my actual address in here. Make sure my city, state, county is correct, and it is. I'll leave primary as yes and primary for country region as yes. Click OK. And then down here, I'm going to need to also add a phone number because that populates on the receipt. And if you tried to figure out where it was coming from and you didn't know this little tidbit, this will save you a lot of time, believe me. All right, so let's add our phone number in the contact information area. So for description, we're just going to call this phone. We're going to leave the type as phone. And for the contact number, we're going to put it in a specific format. And make sure you use the same format for every phone number for your stores. That way your receipts are uniform. So I'm going to enter it like this, 940-224-4444, just like that, with spaces and hyphens and parentheses, just like that. Then I'll check that it's primary, and then I'm going to click Save. All right, so that got our operating unit done. Now let's do some number sequence magic. You do have to create a couple of number sequences whenever you're doing a new store. First one is for statement voucher, and the second one would be for statement number. So let's go and do that. So I am going to go to the number sequences form. This one right here. I'm going to click New Number Sequence. And here in the number sequence code, I'm going to put in something similar to this kind of naming convention. STV underscore Denton, like that. So statement voucher underscore, that's just a naming convention. You can do whatever you want, but I like using it this way. You only have 10 characters, so you might have to abbreviate. And then for the name, put in something like this, statement store Denton voucher. Again, that's just the way I do it. Makes it easy to find all the ones that are related. In the scope parameters section, I'm going to make sure that it's set to operating unit. And then for operating unit, I will look for my Denton store. There we are, Denton, Texas. And now in the segment section, it's probably going to pre-populate some stuff. We really don't need it. We can do them all ourselves. So let's remove, remove, and remove. And then we'll click Add. Do the first one as a constant with the value of SV Denton, Texas. Let's abbreviate it because I really want this to be a length of 9 just to make everything uniform for all my stores. How about like doing it just like that? When I tab away, the length updates. I'm going to click Add again, alphanumeric segment, and I'm going to put in some pound signs or hashtags, people like to call them nowadays. So I'm going to do 6 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tab away, and I can see there's 6 of them. I'm going to move this down below my constant because I want it to be the second thing, not the first. There we go. It should have the constant and then the alphanumeric. Good. So down in the general section, come right down here and it pre-populates all these 9s. And really there's 9 9s pre-populated. And I only want there to be 6 because that's how big this section is here for my numbers. So I'm just going to delete 3 of these 9s. 1, 2, 3. And then in the references section, I will click Add. And then for area, I will choose retail store. And then I will look for voucher. I'm going to close this little warning because it thought I was using the first selection. It got a little too happy before I wanted it to. So now I will click OK. And then down here in the performance section, we'll just make sure that pre-allocation is set to no. We're not going to use that for the store. Now we'll click Save. All right, that one's done. Let's move on to our next number sequence that we need to do. Again, this one's for statement number. I'm going to go back to the main screen here, still in number sequences, click New Number Sequence, and then for the number sequence code, I'm going to put something like ST Denton, and then retail statement store Denton, something like that. Scope, operating unit again. Operating unit will be our Denton store. Let's do our segments here. So we've got some, so let's delete them all. Start from scratch. So the first one we're going to do is a constant, and we're going to call this S Denton T. Click Add again, do our alphanumeric section with 6 pound signs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tab away. I can see there's 6. Move it down. Excellent. And then down in the number sequence, number allocation area, delete 3 of these 9s to match this. 1, 2, 3. So now we will click Add to do our references, find retail store again. This time we'll do statement number, click OK. Make sure our pre-allocation is turned off and click Save. There's our second number sequence done. All right. So we got some sequences done. We've got our operating unit ready to go. Now let's add that operating unit to organizational hierarchies. So let's go to, all right, so for my particular environment, I have 3 hierarchies that I want to add this new store to. You might have 1, you might have 2, you might have more than 3, right? Depends on how you have things all set up because the hierarchies are used all over the place inside D365. So the first one I'll do is retail stores by business unit because I know I need to do that. And then I'm going to click View. Then inside this view of the actual nodes of the hierarchy, I will click Edit. Here are my nodes, and I want it to be in the Fashion node. So I'm going to click on the Fashion node to put my focus there. And then I'm going to click Insert, Retail Channel, and find my Denton store, right? And a store, or actually an operating unit, can only be attached to one node of a given hierarchy at a time. So if it had already been attached somewhere else in this hierarchy, it would not be in this list at all. So I know I'm good to go. So I'll click Denton, Texas. I like to save because I am a saver. You don't necessarily have to in most forms, but you never know. So I will click Save, but I have to publish this hierarchy for it to take effect. So I'll click Publish, and here's a little pro tip from me to you. It wants to know when you want this hierarchy effective. And it's thinking that you can use this for future functionality so that you can set stores to be live with this hierarchy as of January 1st, sometime in the future, that kind of a thing. That's what it's letting you do here. But pro tip is, what if you make your new Denton store today and you say it goes live January 1st, but then management tells you, hey, the Arlington, Texas store has to open and it's opening in 3 weeks. You have to get it ready now before the Denton store is supposed to go live in the hierarchy. You're stuck because this form forces you to always do 1 day ahead or past what you last published. So you can see how you can paint yourself into a corner. Don't do it. So look up here to see what the last effective date was, 8/21/2023. So let's put an effective date of just 1 day after that. Even though it's in the past, it's fine because that's what we actually want it to do. So I'll do 8/22/2023. Central Time is fine, and I'll click Publish. All right, so that particular hierarchy is done, but I have 2 more. So I'm just going to back up and do those others really quick. Retail stores by type, Fabricam. I'm going to view it. I'm going to edit it. I want this one to be in my mall node. I'm going to insert retail channel. Here's my Denton store. I'll save it. I'll publish it. 8/22/2023 was the last one, so I'm going to do 8/23/2023. All right, and then one more, retail stores by region. Click View, click Edit, and this one I'm going to put it inside the central node of Contoso Retail USA. So I'll click on Central and then add a retail channel of Denton, Texas. Save it, publish it, 8/23/2023, click OK, and it is published. So those are my organization hierarchy changes. Let's add this to the channel database. So I'm going to go to channel database. This is what's going to control the cloud scale unit attached to your environment to know which stores belong to which CSU. So in this tier 1 environment, I don't have CSUs because that's not possible. You only get those in tier 2s and above. This one does the old school way of having the default channel database. That's fine, but just know that if you're working in a tier 2 or above, that you will have a cloud scale unit in this list, and to not use the default for tier 2 and above, but instead choose the cloud scale unit that you want this store attached to. You will have at least one for your tier 2 environments and above, but you might have more than one because you might want to split your cloud scale units across all of your geolocations where your stores live. So I'm already clicked on my channel database that I want here, and I will come over here and click Add. Find my Denton store. It's probably going to be near the bottom. Usually is in the order of how you've added it. So there we got Denton, and then I'll click Save. It's going to say, hey, this is going to send down a full sync, and I'll explain that later. That's fine. Yes, I want to continue. So join me on the next episode where we're going to go even further with our new store and POS setup. See y'all later.